In a world governed by strength and status, a lone figure stands victorious atop a mountain of grotesque, slain creatures. His face, splattered with the blood of his enemies, is a mask of grim determination, his eyes reflecting the horrors he has witnessed and wrought. Before him, a radiant cross-shaped light materializes in the air, shimmering above the carnage. The light seems to emanate from a grand, ornate painting hanging in a vast chamber. A voice speaks from the portrait, addressing him by his full name, Mizuno Turu. It reveals itself to be the god he has been searching for, and in recognition of his strength, it has brought him a gift. He questions the entity's motives, asking if it wants him to continue this endless slaughter. The god offers a proposition. If Turu can become the highest-level being in this world, it will grant any wish, even a return to his own world. However, it adds that he is free to ignore the offer and die as he pleases. Enraged, Turu tells the god not to mock him. His eyes blazing with defiance, he grips his weapon and makes a vow. One day, he will drag the god out from its frame and destroy this entire world. The god's voice echoes back, unperturbed. It addresses him simply as Turu, stating that it looks forward to that day. The scene shifts to half a year ago. A younger, unscarred Turu awakens on the polished floor of an opulent mansion, completely disoriented. He wonders where he is, recalling that only a moment ago, he was at school. A voice nearby announces that the summoning was a success. Looking up, he sees a man with a goatee and a fine coat, flanked by 2 guards. Turu asks who they are, suspecting a prank. The man scoffs, confirming he was summoned from another world and insulting his intelligence. He then reveals a small plaque, showing Turu his own status. The boy stares in shock. He is only level 1. The summoner sneers with contempt. He complains that he paid a fortune for the ritual, only to receive someone who is a mere level 1. The plaque clearly displays the name Turu Mizuno and his meager starting health points. A question hangs in the air, a stark contrast to the expectation that those summoned from other worlds should possess high levels. The boy Turu looks up from the floor, his eyes wide with shock and confusion. The summoner's face twists into a sneer of contempt. He dismisses Turu with a sharp gesture, declaring him a failure, utterly worthless. His words strike the boy with the force of a physical blow. Turu stammers, questioning the label of failure. He insists he doesn't understand, but his confusion quickly gives way to a desperate plea to be sent back to his world. Abandoning all pride, he throws himself onto the floor, pressing his forehead to the cold stone in a deep bow. He begs, his voice filled with desperation. He explains his reasoning to the silent figures looming over him. His parents are gone, and he has a sick younger sister, Kana, who depends on him back home. The memory of her surfaces vivid and painful. He sees Kana in her hospital bed, offering him a crayon drawing of their family with a gentle smile. He remembers sitting with her, reading, consumed by the singular thought that he must protect her. This memory fuels his desperation in the present. His face contorts with anguish as he repeats his plea, his voice tight and strained. He needs to go home. The summoner, however, remains entirely unmoved. He looks down at the groveling boy, a staff in his hand and a cruel smile on his face, finding the entire display ridiculous. His attention shifts to a glowing panel displaying Turu's status. He notes the discovery of an unusual skill, one he's never seen before. Despite this, he coldly informs Turu that low-level scum like him are nothing more than toys for torture or fodder for experience points, eliciting a choked cry of denial from the boy. The summoner's eyes scan the details of the skill. Poison Resident, an ability that temporarily neutralizes all poisons. A final, contemptuous judgment is passed. Turu, he declares, is a rare piece of trash. He looms over the kneeling Turu, coldly stating the price paid for his summoning. The young man looks up, his face a mask of pure terror, as a guard stands impassively in the background. His hand descends, fingers wrapping around Turu's with a crushing, deliberate force. In a swift motion, he lifts Turu by the throat, demanding he repay the debt with his insignificant life. As Turu chokes, the summoner's eyes widen in shock, feeling an impossible, superhuman strength resisting him. The summoner grits his teeth, finding himself completely unable to move under an immense, unseen pressure. The sensation is overwhelming, as if a monstrous, spectral jaw has clamped down on his arm, holding him fast. Despite the invisible force, his grip on Turu's neck remains. A status screen materializes, revealing his identity. Abater Argon, level 51. Turu, struggling for breath, realizes he is about to be killed. His eyes fix on the glowing number. Level 51. A horrifying thought crystallizes in his mind. In this world, levels must be directly related to raw power. At that moment, a man in a wide-brimmed hat approaches the summoner, addressing him as Baron Abater. He speaks up, suggesting there is something he'd like to try. He proposes using Turu in a dungeon they've been avoiding, one filled with poisonous swamps. The Baron's expression shifts from frustrated rage to cold amusement. He glances down at the terrified, gasping Turu, finding the suggestion interesting. He releases his grip, deciding to postpone the execution for now. As Turu collapses, the Baron's hand erupts in flame. He declares that this reprieve does not mean he is satisfied just yet. He then demonstrated his power, conjuring flames around himself. He explained that this was fire magic, a skill, and offered a chilling piece of advice to the terrified Turu. Try not to die. Without warning, a gout of flame shot forward, searing the left side of Turu's face. He cried out, stumbling back as the searing pain overwhelmed him. As Turu writhed on the floor in agony, Abadar watched with detached amusement, demanding that he try to be more entertaining. The Baron grabbed him by the hair, forcing him to look up. He mockingly asked if Turu liked the new burn scarring his face, declaring it would serve as a slave mark. With that, he ordered his men to keep Turu in a cell and prepare him for the dungeon the next day. As a hooded figure looked on, one of the guards hauled Turu up from the floor, roughly ordering him to get moving. He desperately pleaded to be sent back home. Abadar scoffed at the notion of a level 1 trash, giving him orders, but then made a proposition. He would consider it if Turu could reach a level higher than his own. Clinging to this sliver of hope, his face a mask of pain and desperation, Turu looked up and asked weakly if that was a promise. Abadar met his gaze with a confident, almost mocking smile and affirmed that it was. As the guards held Turu, Abadar observed him, remarking that in this world, levels are absolute. A flicker of resolve ignited in Turu's eyes. The next day, he is led by 3 armed guards to the gaping, rocky entrance of a dark cavern. Inside, he recognizes the oppressive atmosphere of a dungeon. One of the guards voices his unease, remarking on how creepy the place is and questioning why elite guards like them were assigned this duty. Another guard shoves him forward, telling him to get moving or he'll be turned into experience points before he can even reach level 11. The weight of his promise to the Baron presses down on him. He has no idea how he can possibly surpass the man's level. As they proceed deeper into the cavern, one of the guards observes that the rumors were true. The place is full of poisonous swamps. He adds that it seems to be abandoned, with no monsters inside. A seated guard explains that dungeons are only valuable for the treasures and monsters they contain, as monsters allow people to level up. Without either, they're worthless. Turu considers this, thinking that if he can find even a weak monster, he might be able to level up. The realization dawns on him. This world truly operates like a game, where defeating monsters leads to leveling up. He wonders if this means he has a chance, but immediately cautions himself that it can't be that easy. The guard crushes a stone, explaining that for them, their current level range is their limit. Baron Abadar, however, has the right to do as he wishes with dungeons and slave soldiers. This, combined with his blessed skills, is what allowed him to reach level 51. Turu listens, the vast power difference made starkly clear. A sudden, wet slapping sound echoes from deeper within the cave, catching the guard's attention. From the darkness, a grotesque, toad-like creature with human hands emerges. One of the guards cries out in surprise, realizing there are monsters in the dungeon after all. The grotesque creature stood before them. Turu Mizuno, observing it, thought it looked surprisingly weak, like a simple frog. One of the guards, a man with a hat and goatee, raised his sword, claiming the kill for himself and dismissing it as small fry. He lunged forward, boasting of his speed as he unleashed an attack he called Thunderblast. A flash of energy erupted from his hand, striking the ground near the creature. But the blast missed its mark. The creature, with 2 small hops, easily evaded the attack, causing a bead of sweat to run down the guard's face as he let out a small, confident chuckle. His confidence vanished in an instant. The creature was completely unharmed. Before the guard could react, a long, spear-like tongue shot out from the creature's mouth, aimed directly at his head. His eyes widened in disbelief and terror. The tongue struck true, piercing his skull with explosive force. His head burst in a spray of dark fluid, his body slumping to the ground as Turu and the other guards looked on, frozen in shock. Turu's mind reeled, his eyes wide with horror. The remaining guard cried out in disbelief, revealing that their fallen comrade had been level 18, yet was killed in a single hit. The reason for the overwhelming power difference became terrifyingly clear. A status window materialized, identifying the creature as Hikato, a monster of level 117. As the other guards stammered in terror at the impossible level, the creature began to consume the headless corpse. As he watched the gruesome scene, a chilling understanding washed over Turu. The sight of the monster, the dead guard, and the immense level gap crystallized a fundamental truth in his mind. He finally grasped that he was witnessing a being on a completely different plane of existence, its power utterly incomparable to their own. The realization settled upon him with crushing weight, a stark and undeniable fact. This is a world where levels rule everything. He could only watch as blood splattered across the dungeon floor. Tears streamed from his wide, terrified eyes as a single, horrifying realization took root in his mind. In front of the strong, the weak can only await death. The thought concluded with absolute finality as the massive creature's hand, dripping with gore, loomed over him. A low, guttural laugh echoed in the chamber, sealing his despair. Staring up at the grotesque, blood-splattered form of the massive toad creature, Turu is paralyzed by terror. The immense gap in their power levels is crushingly apparent, and a single, frantic thought consumes him. He must run, or he will be killed. From a distance, the 2 guards watch the scene unfold, their faces pale with disbelief. They mutter in shock, unable to comprehend how any monster could possess such a high level. Their fear overwhelms them. Without a second thought for the boy, they turn and flee back towards the cave entrance. Turu, still on the ground, cries out for them to wait, but his plea is ignored. He realizes he is truly alone as he looks forward, only to find the path blocked by the gaping, tooth-filled maw of another monster. A glance over his shoulder confirms the hopelessness of his situation. Behind him lies a poisonous swamp. There is nowhere to run. Trapped and abandoned, a grim resolve takes hold. He braces his body against a large boulder, pushing with every ounce of his strength. Suddenly, a tremendous crash erupts just behind him, shaking the very ground and showering the area with debris. He instinctively ducks, covering his head for protection. In their hiding spot, one of the guards bursts into cruel laughter. He remarks that the slave proved to be useful after all, having served as a perfect diversion. His companion, however, does not share the sentiment. Overwhelmed by the horrific scene, he doubles over and vomits. As the dust settles, Turu looks up bewildered. The massive toad creature has charged right past him, completely ignoring him in its pursuit of the fleeing guards. The remaining guard can only stare in utter confusion, wondering why the boy was spared. He could only watch in horror as the other creature, a pale, long-haired beast, finished devouring one of the guards who had abandoned him, its massive teeth crunching through bone. The monster's blood-splattered maw filled his vision, a stark reminder of the fate that awaited him as he stood frozen just feet away. Panic seized him. Backed against the cold cavern wall, a desperate scream tore from his throat as he realized he was next. He glanced back just as the creature lunged, its arm a pale blur. It was impossibly fast. There was no way to run. His feet tangled beneath him, sending him stumbling to the ground. A split second later, the monster's fist obliterated the spot where he had just been standing, shattering rock and dust into the air. Scrambling backward from the impact, his eyes caught sight of a small, dark, spherical object that had rolled to a stop nearby. He pressed himself against the wall, hands clutching his head as his mind raced. He had to think to figure out what to do. The creature loomed over him, its shadow casting him in darkness. But beneath the terror, a new resolve hardened within him. He had to find a way to survive. His gaze darted back to the strange, dark sphere on the ground. An idea, desperate and wild, began to take shape. As if sensing his shift in focus, the monster opened its cavernous mouth, saliva dripping from its enormous, squared-off teeth, ready to strike. He refused to give up, his mind set on a single, desperate promise to himself. He would return home. The creature's attack slammed down, shattering the rock beside his head with immense force. The impact sent him tumbling backward, stopping just short of a murky pool. He realized with horror that if he fell into the poisonous swamp, he would surely die. With no other option, he plunged beneath the surface of the toxic water. He burst out of the water, gasping for air. He knew he had to get out quickly, but then he noticed the poison was dissolving the ropes around his wrists. He could move freely now, with his hands unbound. He scrambled out of the swamp and onto the rocky shore, drenched and shaken. He looked back and saw the toad-like creature watching him from the other side, its grin wide but unmoving. It wasn't chasing him. He wondered if the poisonous swamp was a barrier the monster couldn't cross. But then a more urgent question surfaced. Why wasn't he in agony? He felt no pain at all. If the swamp was truly poisonous, that could only mean one thing. A violent cough shook him. He scooped up some of the liquid, the foul smell confirming his suspicions. It was definitely poison, and yet it had no effect. A memory of a skill surfaced in his mind. Poison neutralizes poison. As his hand glowed with a faint light, he understood. His own body had rendered the deadly toxin harmless. He watched the swamp's surface, a realization dawning. This ability, it really worked. A flicker of hope ignited within him. If this was true, he might actually be able to get away from that monster. His hand tightened into a fist, a surge of resolve cutting through his fear. But his hope was short-lived. A massive tongue, impossibly long, shot out from the cavern's edge and slammed into the swamp just beside him. The creature was still there, relentless. He recoiled, thinking that with his poison-resident skill, he could simply wait it out, hidden in the toxic waters. But then, a stark warning materialized before his eyes. His ability had a limit. He had only 1 minute to escape the swamp before the neutralization failed. Panic seized him. A time limit? Now of all times? The cruel irony was staggering. He thrashed in the viscous liquid, his lungs burning. He needed air, but the creature's tongue continued to whip across the surface, searching for him. He broke the surface just enough to breathe, realizing the monster's tongue couldn't quite reach him this close to the cavern wall. But he couldn't stay like this. His time was running out. The warning flashed again, 45 seconds remaining. Was there any way out of this trap? His gaze swept across the dark expanse of the swamp. There was no time left to hesitate or plan. It was all or nothing. He took one last, deep gasp of air, the timer now showing only 38 seconds left. Then he plunged beneath the surface, kicking with all his might, his body a dark shape moving through the toxic depths. The countdown continued, 26 seconds. He burst through the surface again, water streaming from his face, his eyes fixed on the far side. He had to make it. With only 18 seconds left, he pushed forward, his only thought to just keep swimming. He thrashed through the viscous swamp, the internal warning now screaming in his mind. 10 seconds left. Clawing at the muddy bank, his grip began to fail. Panic surged as he realized he was slipping. With only 3 seconds of his immunity remaining, his fingers lost their purchase, sending him tumbling back toward the toxic mire. Across the swamp, the monstrous toad creature watched his struggle. Then, the countdown hit its end. The warning flashed a final, stark message. 0 seconds left. His protection was gone. Suddenly, a grotesque, pale hand burst from the murky depths, its fingers wrapping tightly around something below the surface. But he was already on the shore, gasping for air. He had made it. He turned, bewildered, trying to process what had just happened. His eyes found the creature on the far side of the swamp. A wave of relief washed over him. It was too far away. It couldn't possibly reach him. The relief shattered instantly. The creature's maw opened, and a horrifyingly long tongue shot out, rocketing across the entire expanse toward him. There was no time to get away. In a flash, the fleshy appendage was upon him, its wet tip hovering just inches from his face. With a sickening, wet slap, the creature's tongue made contact, pressing directly against his wide, terrified eye. He pants heavily, his eyes wide with renewed fear. The immediate threat of the long tongue has vanished, but a new horror has taken its place. A small, pale creature with a massive, round head and a grotesque grin of human-like teeth crawls towards him on the cavern floor. The creature suddenly stops its advance and begins to slink away. A nervous laugh escapes Turu's lips as he watches it retreat, believing for a moment that it has given up the chase. He watches as the creature slips back into the murky water, questioning its actions. He realizes his suspicion was correct. There must be a limit to how far the monster can stretch its tongue. Still, he wonders what's planning now. The answer comes in the form of a grotesque close-up. The creature's mouth hangs open, drool dripping from its oversized teeth, its single visible eye gleaming with malevolent intent. With a wet slap, the creature plants its hand firmly on the ground, and Turu instinctively flinches, bracing for another attack. The conflict is taking place within a vast, damp cavern, its ceiling supported by thick, natural pillars of rock. In an instant, the confrontation is over. Turu stands frozen as the small creature's head violently explodes, splattering blood and viscera across the cavern floor. The gruesome sight turns his stomach. A wave of nausea washes over him, and he gags, unable to suppress his body's visceral reaction. He doubles over, vomiting onto the stone floor. Nearby, the headless corpse of the creature lies still amidst the gore. He continues to retch, spitting saliva and bile onto the ground, the shock and disgust of the event overwhelming him. He pushes himself up from the grimy floor, his face a mask of exhaustion and grim determination. A single thought cuts through the haze of shock. He must get out of this dungeon. He peers into the darkness ahead, reasoning that if he continues down this path, he should eventually find a way out. With a quiet resolve, he rises to his feet, his sneaker nudging a small, discarded basket as he stands tall against the rough-hewn cavern wall. He stands at the threshold of a vast, dark chamber, a lone figure dwarfed by the immense, oppressive emptiness before him. But a chilling thought gives him pause. What will he do after getting out? The grim reality sets in. He will only be captured by a botter, enslaved, and ultimately killed. His despairing thoughts are cut short as he senses movement behind him. Another creature, small and pale with a wide, toothy grin, is crawling toward him. As it approaches, a realization dawns on him. His poison-neutralizing skill. It isn't just for defense. Down here, surrounded by venomous monsters, it could become a powerful weapon. The memory of a botter's condescending, smirked surfaces. The Baron had told him that levels are absolute in this world, and that he would only consider Turu's plea if he reached a level higher than his own. That challenge ignites a fire within him. He clenches his fist, his expression hardening. Fine, he will do it. He will defeat the monsters in this dungeon and raise his level. His resolve is fueled by a single, precious memory. His sister's bright, joyful smile as she calls out to her big brother. He planted his foot firmly on the cavern floor, his bruised and bloodied face contorted with desperate resolve. A silent promise echoed in his mind, a plea directed at his sister. Wait for me, Kana. This desperation then hardened into an unbreakable vow. His gaze sharpened as he declared his new purpose to the oppressive darkness of the dungeon. He would raise his level here and become stronger than anyone else. Standing at the precipice of a deeper part of the dungeon, Mizuno Turu steels his resolve. He vows to hunt the monsters within and raise his level. However, he quickly realizes that in his current state, he is defenseless and will need a weapon. Just then, his eyes catch a glint of light from the cavern floor. He approaches and finds the source of the light, the discarded equipment of a soldier, lying in a shallow pool of water on the stone floor. His expression darkens with a mix of disgust and grim understanding. It appears the monster spat out the gear. He remembers the soldiers and the terrible things they did to him. Despite their cruelty, he never imagined their end would be like this. The thought conjures a horrific image. A monstrous, pale head with a massive jaw filled with human-like teeth, grinding away at a soldier's body. A chilling realization washes over him. The same fate could have easily befallen him. Shaken, he clutches his chest, but forces the fear down. He has already decided to move forward, he tells himself, so there's no need to be afraid. His resolve hardened. He crouches before the fallen soldier's gear. He kneels, placing his hands together in a brief, solemn gesture over the body. With quiet respect, he states his intention to borrow the equipment. Rising, he begins to don the gear, first fastening the leather belt around his tunic. After pulling on the soldier's boots, his attention turns to a short sword lying nearby. His hand, now protected by a gauntlet, closes firmly around the sword's hilt. He pulls with all his might, but the weapon doesn't budge. Straining, he grunts in disbelief. He can't lift it. He wonders what is wrong with this thing, shocked by its impossible weight. He stares at the sword, a translucent message floating before his eyes revealing the reason for his failure. The weapon requires a minimum level to wield. The concept is new and confusing to him. The realization dawns on him. In this world, physical prowess is directly tied to one's level. This means he won't be able to wield such power, and he suspects the other equipment will be similarly unusable. His suspicion is confirmed as he examines the other pieces. The gauntlets, the armor, the helmet, each has its own level requirement, all far beyond his current reach. They are no good to him. He sits back, the weight of his powerlessness settling upon him. The situation is far from reassuring, but he has not given up hope entirely. Among the soldier's belongings, he finds a simple knife. A quick check reveals its requirement. Level 1. It is the only weapon he can currently wield. Acknowledging that it's better than nothing, he also takes stock of his meager provisions, realizing he must find more food soon. With the small blade in hand, he turns his attention to the path ahead. Before he can venture deeper into the dungeon, he must first devise a strategy to defeat the monsters that surely lurk within. His gaze falls upon a pool of black, bubbling poison. An idea begins to form. His unique skill, the ability to neutralize poison, is his only real advantage. He dips his hand into the toxic liquid, confirming it has no effect on him, though its potency remains a mystery. He knows he must find a way to make use of this. His attention then shifts to the nearby corpse of a fallen soldier, whose body is covered in the same dark substance. With a quiet apology, he steels himself. Though he finds the task distasteful, there is something he must confirm. He grabs the soldier's body and begins to drag it towards the pool of poison, straining with the effort as he nears his goal. As he touches the corpse, a sharp sensation jolts through him. His eyes fly open in shock as the dead soldier's body suddenly convulses. He watched as the dead soldier's body began to bubble and froth violently where his hand had made contact. The flesh and armor dissolved rapidly, melting away into a dark, viscous puddle on the stone floor. Recoiling with a gasp, he couldn't believe the sheer potency of the poison. But his horror quickly gave way to a startling thought. If the poison was this powerful, then perhaps he could use it. His eyes darted to the side as a plan began to form in his mind. He then looked down at the simple knife he had taken. That was it. With newfound determination, he knelt by the remains and dipped the blade into the poisonous liquid, hoping his idea would work. He stared intently at the coated blade, a desperate plea forming in his mind. It had to work. It was the only weapon he had. Lifting the weapon from the puddle, he saw the blade was now thoroughly coated in the black substance. This, he thought, should be enough. A notification materialized before him, confirming his success. The weapon was now a poison knife, laced with a deadly poison and requiring a minimum level of 0. A wave of relief and triumph washed over him. He had done it. He kneels beside the corrosive pool, contemplating its potential. If he could only find a way to bring this poison with him, it would make for a powerful weapon. His attempt to scoop it up is futile. The liquid splashes back into the pool. It's no good. He forces himself to think, needing a way to land a decisive blow against the monsters. A container that won't corrode and can be used immediately is what he needs, but he realizes his water skin would be eaten through in minutes. Dismissing that idea, he searches his mind for another solution. There must be some other, more definite way. Then a new thought begins to form. No, wait, he thinks. His expression hardens with resolve. He realizes this isn't the time to be picky and decides he'll have to try this new approach. Several hours pass in the quiet gloom of the cavern. He sits and waits, having moved deeper into the dungeon. The monsters aren't showing up, making him wonder if it was a mistake to wait. He considers the possibility that there are other creatures here besides Hikato. Just as doubt sets in, a sound alerts him. His eyes widen in tense anticipation. It's here. From the darkness, a new monster emerges. It is a lean, four-legged beast with a single, massive eye that fixes upon him as it stalks forward. The creature, a level 79 monster identified as Laelaps, loomed over Toru. As he stared up in terror, a new skill manifested within him, improved dynamic visual acuity. He steeled himself, knowing that fear was not an option. He had to fight to survive. The beast, however, seemed to ignore him for a moment, sniffing the ground before letting out a low, menacing snarl. A flicker of hope ignited within him. He realized that compared to the monstrous Hikato, this creature's level was significantly lower. Clutching a small stone, he thought his plan might just work after all. The creature's snout twitched as it caught a scent. Its single, massive eye locked onto its target, and it began to advance. Despite the approaching danger, Toru remained perfectly still, a single bead of sweat tracing a path down his dirt-streaked face as he waited for the right moment. He then sprang to his feet, deliberately making himself the bait. Acknowledging the beast's immense size, he hurled the stone and yelled, challenging it to come forward. But the creature halted, refusing to advance. Frustration mounted in Toru as he questioned its hesitation, not having time for this delay. Then, the realization struck him. The beast was wary of the poisonous swamp. It had sensed the trap. It began to circle the perimeter, cautiously avoiding the toxic ground. Seeing his plan failing, Toru resolved to take the initiative himself and close the distance. He moved forward, his gaze locked on the creature. The beast watched his approach, its single eye tracking his every move with cautious intensity. The standoff was a silent exchange of intent. The beast dug its sharp claws into the earth, bracing itself, mirroring Turu's own ready stance. The confrontation was about to begin. As the beast stood its ground, Turu's hand moved to his belt, his fingers closing around the hilt of a sheathed blade. It lunged forward with a roar, its massive jaws snapping at the air where Turu had just been standing. He watched it land, acknowledging its incredible speed. He knew he couldn't match its agility, but he was certain that wouldn't be an issue. From his mouth, he spat a fine mist, striking the creature directly in its single, massive eye. The beast reeled back, blinded and disoriented, crashing heavily onto the cavern floor. He saw his opening. With the creature having lost its balance, he knew this was his chance and charged forward, vowing to drag it to the depths of hell with him. He slammed his body into the monster's flank, tackling it with all his strength. The momentum carried them both over the edge and into the murky, poisoned water below. He clung to the thrashing beast, gritting his teeth against the struggle. He shouted that it wasn't over yet. His desperate gambit had paid off. He had turned himself into a living poison bag. No creature could remain unaffected with poison melting its eyes, and at such close range, its massive eye couldn't protect it. This tactic also rendered its vaunted, improved dynamic visual acuity completely useless. He held the beast fast, submerged in the swirling poison. A manic grin spread across his face as the stakes became clear in his mind. He could do this. He could defeat Laelaps. The creature was level 79, while he was a mere level 1, but the thought only fueled his resolve. If he could just defeat this one opponent, his own level would surely skyrocket. On the muddy, blood-soaked ground, Toru Mizuno desperately holds back the cyclopean beast, Laelaps, as it lunges for him with a ferocious snarl. He strains against its immense strength, his face a mask of pain and effort as the creature's fanged maw inches closer to his head. Despite the overwhelming power difference, he realizes there might be a chance. Drawing a small blade, he reasons that even with the gap in their levels, striking a weak spot should be enough to inflict significant damage. He lunges forward, thrusting the knife directly at the creature's single, massive eye. To his horror, the blade stops dead, unable to penetrate the seemingly soft tissue. He stares in disbelief, realizing the eyeball itself is impossibly tough. The beast responds to the failed attack with a deafening roar. As it begins to thrash wildly, Turu feels his grip slipping, crying out that he can't hold on much longer. His grip fails, and he is violently thrown backward, splashing hard into the murky water. Refusing to give up, he grabs onto the creature's leg, his eyes wide with desperation as he screams for it to stay still. His desperate plea is ignored. The beast kicks out with tremendous force, sending Turu flying through the air before he crashes heavily onto the ground. He lies broken on the earth, coughing raggedly from the impact as the creature's heavy footsteps echo nearby. The force of the impact was too much. A wave of agony washes over him as he coughs up a spray of dark blood. He lies broken on the ground, coughing as a system notification materializes before him, displaying his health at a critical 8 out of 36. He can only stare in disbelief, thinking this has to be some kind of joke. The pain is so immense that his body refuses to move. He realizes how bad the situation is, glancing over to see the beast still standing, shocked that it still has so much health remaining. In response, the creature lets out a deafening roar. He can only watch from the ground, his face a mask of pure terror. As the beast stands over the watery terrain, he understands with chilling certainty that if it had truly intended to kill him, its attacks would have already ended his life. His hope drains away, replaced by a desperate, silent plea for the monster to just stay down and die. Suddenly, the massive creature collapses, its heavy body crashing to the ground with a thud. A final, guttural screech escapes its maw as it finally goes still. He watches, his relief turning to horror as he sees movement within the beast's giant, unblinking eye. Something is trying to crawl out. From the ruined orb, a slender, shadowy hand emerges, dripping with fluid. Turu can only stare, paralyzed by a new and profound terror as the dark form begins to pull itself free. As the entity rises from the corpse, his mind screams at him to run away, to escape quickly. But it's no use. The agony is too great, and his body will not respond. He stared into the abyss of his failure, the realization crashing down upon him. It was truly impossible. The thought sent him spiraling into utter despair. He was going to die. He didn't want to, but the certainty of it was overwhelming. Lying broken on the ground, he could only offer a silent, desperate plea to any god that might be listening. His plea echoed a memory from his past, a time when he had prostrated himself just as helplessly, begging with all his might. The memory sharpened, focusing not on the act of begging, but on the reason for it. He remembered his motivation, the one constant driving him forward. His sick sister, Kana, was waiting for him. He recalled the pained, weary expression on his father's face during that time. The recollection of that powerlessness ignited a fire within him. He questioned what good his prayers and bowing had ever accomplished. Leaving everything to luck had changed nothing. A surge of furious resolve coursed through him as he grit his teeth against the pain. With this newfound clarity, he understood that passivity was a death sentence. He knew he wouldn't be able to survive in this world if he didn't fight back. He staggered to his feet, his eyes falling upon a discarded short sword. He gripped its hilt, the cold metal a solid anchor for his determination. With the weapon in hand, he fixed his gaze on the shadowy figure and roared his ultimate goal. He would return to his original world. He then broke into a desperate, lunging charge. He closed the distance, raising the blade for a decisive strike against the entity, whose shadowy form now bore the ghastly visage of a canine beast. This was a one-time fight, a single chance he could not afford to fail. He realized that attacking the eyeball again would be pointless. A protective membrane had formed. However, his previous assault combined with the poisonous swamp had weakened it, making it fragile. This, he understood, was the perfect timing for the perfect attack. With this resolve, he plunged a small, sharp object deep into the creature's flesh. Gritting his teeth against the strain, he felt it sink in, his eyes wide with desperate focus. The entity retaliated instantly, its maw clamping down hard on his arm. He let out a choked cry as pain shot through him and blood erupted from the wound. The violent counterattack was its last. A moment later, the creature's head ruptured, dissolving into a torrent of dark fluid as Toru was thrown back by the force. But he wasn't finished. Still driving the object into the monster's core, he roared for it to fall already as its body began to crack and splinter. He pushed deeper, his face a mask of grim determination as the creature's form destabilized around his hands. Its shadowy body thrashed wildly, a silent, tooth-filled scream erupting from its dissolving maw. Toru held on, his grip unwavering despite the chaos. With a final, guttural roar, he drove the object all the way in. The creature's head began to bubble and pop, its very substance breaking down from the inside. The result was a catastrophic detonation of dark energy, blasting outward from the creature's core and shattering the ground around them. In the quiet that followed, Toru knelt over the rapidly dissolving remains. He stared at his own hand, coated in the creature's ichor, as its monstrous head melted into nothing. He stared down at the dissolving remains of the creature, his breath coming in ragged gasps. A wave of relief washed over him as he confirmed it was truly dead. I did it, he thought before shouting in triumph. I defeated it. His cry echoed in the vast, silent cavern. He was alone, standing in the dark, murky water that filled the chamber. The adrenaline of victory began to fade, replaced by a chilling realization. His strength was at its absolute limit. He knew he had to get out of the poisonous swamp quickly. But as he tried to move, a sudden, violent spasm racked his body. He gasped, clutching at his chest, as an unbearable pain erupted from his heart. His entire body felt hot, as if it were about to crack and break apart from within. The agony was overwhelming. Panting, he struggled to stay conscious as a blinding white light suddenly erupted from his very being, illuminating the entire cavern. Kneeling in the water, he watched in disbelief as shimmering particles of light swirled around him, emanating from his own body. Just as suddenly as it began, the phenomenon ceased. He caught his breath, a look of shock on his face as he realized the excruciating pain had completely vanished. In the quiet aftermath, he became aware of other changes. His hair felt longer, brushing against his neck. He looked down at his arm, a sense of unfamiliarity dawning on him as he wondered if it had always been so thick. Before he could process these physical alterations, a luminous, rectangular interface materialized in the air before him. It carried an announcement. He had defeated a level 1 entity and, as a result, had leveled up. The message clarified the magnitude of his growth. His level had skyrocketed from 1 all the way to 36. He stares in disbelief at the confirmation of his new status. Level 36. He actually did it. Looking down at his torso, he realizes the immense level up has completely rebuilt his battered body, healing his wounds. His mind races to comprehend the scale of this leap in power. At level 36, he wonders if he could already be stronger than the minions serving a body. Before he can dwell on it, a new announcement flashes before him. It offers congratulations for surpassing level 30 and informs him he has gained a new title, Poison Soldier. The details continue, explaining that his skill has evolved because of the new title. His poison nullification limit has increased to 100%, and he can now use a creation/release ability on any poison he has absorbed. He is stunned. He never knew his skill could evolve, a fact Abater had certainly never mentioned. As an outsider to this world, the entire situation feels profoundly unusual. Suddenly, a sharp noise cuts through the silence of the cavern, whipping his attention away from the status screen. His eyes land on a grotesque, emaciated creature with spiky hair, hunched over and gnawing on the scattered remains of the Laelaps. He notes its level is only 19, but in his current state, he knows this is no time for another fight. The creature pauses its feeding and looks up, its dark eyes locking directly onto him. He recoils slightly, unsettled by its predatory gaze. In a horrifying instant, he understands. It was not alone. Dozens of the creatures have emerged from the shadows, forming a tight circle around him. He is completely surrounded. He realizes they must have been hiding in the darkness of a nearby cave entrance, drawn out to hunt for the remains of his battle. From that same cave emerges their leader, a massive goblin leader, level 62. Panic sets in. He has no chance to recover, no way to run. Faced with a boss of such overwhelming power, he feels a wave of despair, but a spark of defiance remains. He will not give up. He stood his ground, the horde of scavengers and their hulking leader closing in. With his face bloodied and resolve hardening in his eyes, he clutched the knife in his hand. A strange, white substance began to ooze and envelop his bandaged arm as he vowed to survive this ordeal, banking everything on his newly evolved skill. Wading through the murky water, Turu observes the creatures on the shore. He reasons that if they are avoiding the poisonous swamp, it must be an effective weapon against them. A system notification confirms his theory, and then his skill has evolved into Poison Soldier. His poison nullification limit has surpassed 100%, and he can now use new skills, creation, and release with any poison he has absorbed. He realizes this means he can fight while keeping his distance. He clenches his fist, a grim determination hardening his features. This new power is the key to winning. The creatures haven't attacked yet, which means they must be wary. Believing it's now or never, he scoops up the foul swamp water, preparing to drink it. He brings the water to his lips, and an overwhelming wave of nausea hits him. The horrible stench and extreme bitterness are far worse than he imagined, and he fights the urge to vomit. On the shore, the goblin-like creatures watch, their faces splitting into wide, manic grins. He forces himself to swallow the vile liquid. For a tense moment, nothing happens. Just as despair begins to set in, a memory surfaces. His sister, Kana, crying alone in her hospital bed. The image steals his resolve. As if sensing his renewed determination, the goblin leader loses its patience. With a guttural roar, it lunges from shore, charging directly towards him through the shallow water. The creature's fist connects with brutal force, sending Turu flying backward. He crashes into the swamp, completely submerged by the impact as the smaller goblins watch the assault from the safety of the shore. He surfaces, gasping, and realizes with a jolt that his knife was knocked from his hand. He watches it sink into the murky depths. The goblin leader stands on the bank, grinning with arrogance, and Turu understands it's using its allies as a screen. Then, the leader does something utterly unexpected. It hefts one of the smaller scavengers into the air and hurls it into the swamp. The creature crashes into the water with a massive splash, leaving Turu stunned. Before he can process the act, the leader grabs another of its kin and throws it into the water as well. A horrifying realization dawns on Turu. The leader is using its own allies as living stepping stones to cross the poisonous swamp. The brutal strategy becomes clear as more and more bodies are thrown into the water, forming a gruesome bridge. The leader doesn't care if they die. As the other scavengers begin to swarm across the path of their fallen comrades, Turu is momentarily frozen, horrified by the creature's utter lack of empathy. He felt a sudden shift in his perception. As the goblins lunged, their movements seemed to crawl, their attacks unfolding in slow motion. He wondered if this was an effect of leveling up, a new clarity born from the brink of death. This newfound awareness was accompanied by a formal announcement. The poison of the labyrinth of abyss had been fully absorbed. With a surge of power, he thrust his hand forward, roaring out the name of his new ability. Poison creation. His palm, now shrouded in a dark, corrosive energy, slammed into the face of the nearest goblin. The creature shrieked as the poison took immediate effect. Using the creature's momentum against it, he flung the poisoned goblin off the makeshift bridge and into the swamp below, where it dissolved instantly in the toxic waters. As two more scavengers scrambled towards him, he stared in wide-eyed disbelief at his own success. I did it, he breathed. Empowered by the realization, he fought back with a savage intensity, striking down one goblin after another and sending them into the corrosive swamp. With the immediate threats neutralized, he understood that he was able to fight. He could survive this. But his gaze drifted across the swamp to the true problem. The goblin leader, watching with a smug grin. The creature didn't even consider him a threat. It was merely toying with him. He stood alone in the water, knowing he had to devise a new plan before the leader attacked. It would be hard to get closer, and he'd be killed as soon as he tried. The question plagued him. How was he supposed to fight something from such a long distance? As he pondered his disadvantage, he realized his knife was gone, likely broken and lost in the fray. His attention was then drawn to a large stone sitting partially submerged in the swamp. He watched as the stone fizzed and bubbled, its surface slowly dissolving. A dreadful realization struck him. It wasn't just the bodies. The poison was so potent that the limestone cave itself was melting away. He stared across the dissolving landscape at the goblin leader, a desperate idea forming in his mind. If he could just take advantage of this unique situation, perhaps there was a chance. He reasoned that at level 36, he should be capable of more than just simple creation. He dismissed the thought of merely releasing the poison, instead visualizing the act of shooting it forward with force. He activated his poison creation skill, focusing his intent. He imagined gathering the corrosive liquid at his fingertips, concentrating it, needing more and more power before finally shooting it out. The goblin leader, unimpressed by the display, began tearing chunks of rock from the cavern wall and hurling them across the swamp, roaring for a greater challenge. He ignored the projectiles, his concentration absolute. The poison needed to be stronger, and it needed to fly farther. A volatile, swirling mass of venom coalesced at the end of his outstretched hand. With a final push of will, the glob of poison shot forward, streaking across the cavern. The goblin leader's eye widened slightly as he tracked the incoming projectile. It flew past the creature's head. Turu watched from a distance, revealing that he had anticipated the dodge. The goblin was never his target. The poison struck the limestone ceiling directly above the goblin leader. The rock dissolved instantly, and a massive section of the roof broke free, crashing down and crushing the creature beneath its immense weight. The cavern fell silent, the only sound being the steady drip of corrosive liquid from the newly formed hole in the ceiling. He let out a ragged breath, looking at the pinned creature. It couldn't move. He acknowledged that it was all thanks to the goblin's carelessness throughout their fight. He plunges his knife into the goblin leader's head, the creature pinned and helpless beneath the rubble. With his hand dripping of viscous fluid, he offers a cold apology as the light fades from the monster's eyes. Standing over the dissolving corpse, he holds up a glowing orb dropped by the beast, declaring that he'll be using the creature for experience points. A sudden announcement confirms his victory. He has leveled up from 36 to 67. Exhausted, he stands alone in the quiet of the cave. He looks down at his hands in amazement, realizing his body has grown again, healed by the surge of power. But the sudden rush is followed by an overwhelming weakness, and he stumbles. The adrenaline fades, and he collapses to the ground, panting. He understands with dread that he has no strength left in him. As he struggles on the cave floor, his eyes fall upon a piece of flesh lying nearby, a remnant of one of the defeated monsters. A desperate thought forms in his mind. If it means he can live, if it means he can go home, he will do what is necessary. Driven by the will to survive, he resolves to eat whatever he has to. With a grimace of desperation, he brings the raw monster flesh to his mouth and takes a bite. The act provides only a moment's sustenance. His body gives out completely, and he pitches forward, collapsing unconscious onto the cold stone floor. He retches violently, expelling a dark, bloody fluid onto the cavern floor. The raw monster flesh has had an immediate, sickening effect. His body convulses on the ground, sweat and tears mixing with the grime on his face as he struggles against the poison coursing through him. Despite the agony, a single thought cuts through the haze. He has reached a higher level than a botter. For Kana, he thinks he is almost there, just a little more, just a little. Meanwhile, far from the dark cavern, a voice echoes from within an opulent mansion, demanding to know the whereabouts of the guards and the wealth. The speaker is Baron Abater, lounging comfortably with two women. A subordinate reports that the party has not yet returned. Abater smirks, unconcerned. He declares that the boy shall cower in fear and despair for the rest of his days, adding that even if he makes it out alive, it is only a matter of time. Back in the subterranean depths, near the site of the recent slaughter, a deep voice rumbles from the shadows of another passage. It expresses disappointment at not being able to watch the spectacle. From the darkness emerges a monstrous, toad-like creature, its massive form dripping with saliva. A status screen identifies it as Hikato, a being of immense power at level 117, possessing skills of tongue manipulation and leap.